I have been asked by a fellow enthusiast if I could provide more details of how the vacuum routing is set up in our 1973 Mustang convertible. Now, this particular vehicle has, at the time of this filming, just over 21,000 original miles on it because it was truly a barn find survivor. So what you're going to see is largely original, except for the impact of adding air conditioning, which has some routing of certain hoses into the firewall. But for the purposes of the subject at hand, which is vacuum routing for the automatic transmission modulator and for the fuel evaporative venting system, everything you're about to see is original as it came from the factory. So I'm going to stop this video just for a moment to remove the air cleaner housing so I can get a better look at things with vacuum lines. In the meantime, this tan colored tubing is used as part of the fuel evaporative system so that the vacuum inside the air cleaner housing when the engine is running draws vapors trapped inside this fuel evaporative canister full of charcoal that is holding onto fuel vapors. The fuel vapor that travels through that brown tubing goes into the air cleaner housing and gets burned in the engine. And this is what helps keep unburned fuel or unburned hydrocarbons from getting into the atmosphere. It actually is a very capable, well-functioning, well-designed emission control system. Okay, I'm going to clip this and be right back. All right, air cleaner housing has been moved. And now I'm going to show where the vacuum lines are relating to the automatic transmission vacuum modulator and to the fuel evaporative system. This paper and foil hose is where fuel vapors get pulled into the air cleaner housing from the charcoal canister. Also, this canister is a vent hood that allows fresh air to be pulled into the canister as vapors are being pulled into the engine to be burned. The fuel vapors get into the canister from this hose. Now, this hose looks like a vacuum hose, and essentially it is, but it doesn't get connected to a vacuum source from the engine. Rather, if we follow this hose, we find it connects to a steel line. This steel line runs all the way back to the fuel tank. At the top of the tank is a pressure valve that controls when fuel is sent down this line into the canister. I have a separate video and pictures showing that, and I will put that in the description of this video for anybody interested in seeing the photos and the other video. Meantime, back at the ranch, at the firewall, there is a plastic T for vacuum lines. One vacuum line, the one with the white stripe, goes to intake manifold vacuum. The other ends up going down a steel vacuum line toward the back of the transmission, and it goes in the rear center of a transmission modulator valve. In 1973, that vacuum modulator was a little different as compared to years before, where it only had a single vacuum inlet. These have a dual diaphragm, and the second diaphragm gets its vacuum from another vacuum line which ties into the exhaust gas recirculation system. There's a T. This T goes up this line, and through this T goes down to the transmission, and it goes in the smaller forward port of the vacuum modulator. Now, it's really hard to see with this support member in place exactly where these metal vacuum lines all go. I will do my best to get a pic of that. I don't feel inclined to take the support bar off. It's a real pain in the neck to put it back in. But if you take a look, there is the steel line for the fuel evaporative system. The steel lines for the vacuum tubes leading to transmission are a little bit harder to see, and they run across the top of the transmission down to the passenger side, back to the right rear, passenger rear of the oil pan area of the automatic transmission. And the idea is to check and make sure both lines are attached, and applying a vacuum tester to the diaphragm, make sure the diaphragm is not leaking, and then with the engine running, making sure you're getting manifold vacuum to the rear center line feeding the vacuum modulator, and when the engine is off idle and the exhaust gas recirculation valve opens, that you get vacuum to the EGR source as well, back to the modulator. So I hope that helps whoever it is that might need to know more about these vacuum systems. I have some other videos showing how the thermal vacuum switch works with these engines, the 3-port switch that feeds the ignition distributor vacuum advanced diaphragm, and also controls when ported vacuum is allowed to go to the EGR valve. It doesn't happen till the engine is warmed up a little bit. If anybody has any questions, post them in the comments. I'll do what I can to get more clarification.